Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's TheSketchMonkey here, and we have a brand new Honda Civic on our hands today. We're going to talk about the design and what I think about it. The first second I saw this design, another car instantly came into mind, and if you've seen the thumbnail, you already know what car that is, and you're gonna be mind blown literally when I show you all the similarities between these two cars. But overall, when I first saw the Honda Civic prototype, which they call it, which is basically a production version, they just like to keep it safe, like the 400Z. When they showed it, they call it the prototype, but in fact this is exactly what the Civic production version is going to look like, and I like this design a lot. It's what I've been saying for a couple of years now, is that people, the companies and people, designers, are starting to go back on the overstyling and craziness when it comes to adding lines all over the car and bring it back a little bit. This to me looks a lot more confident and a lot more relaxed and less stressed than the previous generation, the 10th generation Civic, and I like that. It's very grown up. It looks bigger than it is, and this is of course the sedan. I really look forward to see the hatchback and the SI versions, of course, and the Type R is going to be interesting to see how they implement that onto this body, because usually what they do is adding more stuff onto it to make it an R version, but having this clean design already is going to be very interesting to see how they implement the R design language and the styling onto this specific package. Now, the reason why I really like this design is that it looks like a more expensive car when you take away some of the styling madness from the model itself. It looks a lot more grown up, and you have a fantastic line flow in this car as well. Now, talking about the spec intact, there's not a lot of information yet on this model because this is still a prototype. The same with the interior. We have some sketches to look at, but I don't think this model that we're looking at right here has a finished interior, which is why they don't show it to us. But we can take the sketch and kind of figure out how the interior will look like, because it is a pretty detailed sketch. But this just goes to show, when we jump into Photoshop here in just a minute, this goes to show just how important graphics are for the brands right now, because the rest of the body, as I'm going to show you, looks almost identical to each other if you look at some specific models, such as the Honda Civic here and the Cadillac CT5. So what I'm gonna do now is just jump into Photoshop here and show you, first of all, what I really appreciate with this new Honda Civic design and why I think this is going to be a huge hit. First of all, the Honda Civic throughout history has always been appreciated by car people and people who like to drive their cars. And the reason for that is that it's an attainable car. It's always kind of looked good, especially the early days, and then a couple of later generations has been a little bit overstyled in my opinion. But in the mid 2000s, for example, it was still a very clean car, very fun to drive, cheap, and of course reliable. So here it is, the new Civic prototype, which is going to be how the production version is actually going to look like. So what I love about this design is you have a super clean line flow all around the car, which you can see right here. So let's start with the shoulder line that wraps all the way around into the graphic feature, which is the rear light. And then you can see that the light itself, the LEDs inside of the light, even follow this line right here, and then creates this line, and of course wraps around and goes the same way on the other side of the car. Another detail that I love about this design is, if you watched my previous videos, you know that I'm a big fan of integrated ducktails. It just sends off in a profile view. If you look at this car from a side view, or any car with an integrated ducktail like this, not something that's been added onto the car, it just gives the car the design a nice send-off at the end. So you have the greenhouse with long curvatures and then a tiny little ducktail in the rear just to mark the end of the design. You can see that is beautifully done with this part right here. It sends the design off from the curvature of the rear here in the back of the greenhouse, and then just a tiny little up like this to send the design off and mark a clear end of the car. And look at the rest of the body of the car here. It's very clean lines. We have another line right here going from the front of the car into the body of the car right here, into the rear fender. And this is what I love about car design, when they do this, when they have just a few clean lines that are wrapping around the car. It just ties everything together and creates a well-defined package of the car, and makes it look, as I said, more exclusive and more upscale than if you were to cut all these lines in different versions like they did kind of with the previous generation of the Civic. This is just a more complete design, even though it's less, if that makes sense. But now let's pop in the Cadillac CT5 here and let me show you how crazy similar these two cars are. So here we have the Civic and here we have the CT5. So let's have a look at the lines here. This is going to be interesting. We have the shoulder line right here, and as you can see, I wish I had another image of the Civic where it's in the same angle of the CT5. That would make it even more obvious than it is right now, but it's pretty obvious just looking at it right here. So let's just start with the shoulder line here of the Civic. Right about here we have the same shoulder line right about here on the Caddy, and you can see that even I was going to remove the graphical features of these two cars. So going to remove the lights and the wheels and make everything just so you can see the shape and the masses of the car and the sculptures of them. But I don't even need to do that here, because you can see that even the graphic features kind of follow the same pattern. Although we have the long LED going down here on the Cadillac. On the Honda Civic, the long goes horizontal instead of vertical like that. So that's the first line, and we're just getting started here. So let's have a look at this line down here at the bottom of the car. Can we find the same line in the Cadillac? Yes, we can, of course. That goes right here, as you can see, into the bumper as well. Let's go even lower and talk about this detail right here, this part. Let's have a look at the Cadillac down here. You can see that it's almost, pretty much identical. It's crazy how similar these two cars actually are when you go into the details here. And I'm not done yet. So let's have a look at the rear diffuser. We have a bit of a little chamfer right here, or whatever you want to call it, a wing. And then that goes into some black plastic right here. And let's look here. We have the same kind of wing here, but here it's gloss black and part of the diffuser. But it still goes in the similar way right here as we have on the Honda Civic. And one of the defining design little graphical features of the CT5 is this detail right here. And guess what? I think you can guess what I'm going to do next. Yes, this little detail is also visible up here on the Honda Civic. It's basically the same copy-paste C-pillar treatment of the Civic as you have on the CT5. And of course, you have a integrated ducktail here on the CT5 as well. I'm sure I can find a lot more similarities between these two cars. And you can even see that the door handles, the position of the door handles are under the shoulder line on both these cars as well. You have the same kind of antenna at the exact same spot right there. And it's just amazing to me how similar these two cars are, even though they come from two completely different cultures. You have the Japanese designers and you have the North American designers with the Cadillac, but still we're merging everything together. And this only means that what I've been saying before, like the graphical design features of the car, the lights, the grills, and the small details, the LEDs in the headlights are going to be so much more important moving forward, because this is what we have right now. Without those things, this Honda Civic just changed a little bit of the proportions, and it could definitely be a Cadillac. And I think that's why I think it looks so good, because I made a CT5 video before talking about it and how much I love the CT5 design. I even love the little weird plastic part that they have on the C-pillar, and I like it on the Civic too, even though it's interesting that they copied the exact same thing. Now I quickly want to talk about the front view here, and the first impressions that I got when I first saw the front view is it looks good. It looks a lot less Cadillac if you look at it from the front. than the rear, that's for sure, but we still have some very cleaned up design here, and it looks of course a lot more like the Accord than the previous generation Civic, which means that it's a lot cleaner, a lot less stylized in the front as well, and that goes well with the rest of the car. However, the lower part here, right about here, from the top grille down, this reminds me of another car which is in the same class as this, and that is the Toyota Corolla. So if you look at these two, it has a very similar styling except for this part right here where they didn't fill it out with some black parts right here. But overall, it reminded me of the Toyota Corolla, not as much as the rear and the rest of the car reminds me of the Cadillac CT5, but that was my first impression when I first saw the front view of the new Civic here. And by the way, some people don't like this front of the Corolla. I think it's a really good looking front end. It looks sporty, it looks futuristic to me, and it just looks cool, specifically when you have these types of headlights here with this shape. It just looks nice, and I like this integration in the front bumper and this sharp line that kind of goes from the shoulder line right here and into this part right here. But that's for another video. This is not about the Corolla, this is about the new Honda Civic here. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Just the first second that I saw the Civic, I thought it was a mini Cadillac. So I had to make this video quickly to just show you my thoughts of this, and let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Are you a fan of the new Civic in general? If you like Cadillac, then for sure you're going to be a fan of the Civic. But in general, are you a fan of the less overstyled or less stylized in general design of this new 11th generation Civic? Or do you prefer the older, the previous, for example, Civic Type R, when they just smashed a lot of lines, wings and stuff onto the car? Which one do you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'm the TheSketchMonkey. Take care, and I will see you in the next video.